Booz Allen is delivering mission-ready solutions, AI-powered, software-defined, and commercial-first. Combining deep mission experience with commercial partnerships, Booz Allen is defining a new defense industrial base, a network that crosses traditional boundaries to scale non-traditional technologies and brings our best tech to the hands of the warfighter faster, effectively delivering technology for today and tomorrow. Booz Allen, accelerating outcomes for today's warfighters.
Hello and welcome to the Emerging Tech Horizons podcast, sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm Arun Seraphin, Executive Director of NDIA's Emerging Technologies Institute. On today's episode, we're going to explore the complexity of tracking Pentagon funding for emerging technologies, beginning from the President's budget request through the congressional appropriations process, and then on to the actual awarding and funding of contracts, and then even to tracking the outcomes that resulted from the funding. What can sometimes look, at least in a classroom, like a single stream of funding often ends up branching into a maze of accounts, program elements, line items, things called reprogramming actions that are complex and hard to follow. By the time the money reaches the actual people who do the work in industry, it's hard to figure out whether the original intent survived or if it's changed anywhere along the way, and then whether the money we spent actually accomplished what we had set out for in the first place. To help us work through all of these challenges and trying to follow the flow of money from a great idea in the president's budget or in the congressional appropriation through contracts and to outcomes are two very distinguished and expert guests, Bess Dopkeen and Andy Vanlandingham. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Bess is currently the founder of Keen Edge Strategies. Her most recent position was Senior Advisor to the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, Heidi Shyu, and Bess and I were colleagues previous to that with her time on the Hill and her time in the Pentagon. Andy is currently the Director of Strategic Outreach at Draper. Previously, Andy spent over 2 decades on the Hill as a professional staff member on the Senate Appropriations Committee for Defense. Bess and Andy, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, known you guys a long time, so I didn't bother doing your whole backgrounds because I know you know your background. So let's just give you guys a chance. Tell us a little bit about how you got to these positions you're in now and how your connection has been over the years to the budget and appropriation process.
Let's see. I started in the Pentagon about 20 years ago. I dropped in at the top as a support contractor for the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Technology and Logistics and ran the DAYS program, which is back in the day, they took all the 100 MDAPs, the major defense acquisition programs, divided them into thirds. And so every month you would review a third of those programs to bring them how they're doing to the Undersecretary's attention before the annual report to Congress would go out. Because you never wanted to surprise the undersecretary with any sort of problems in an annual report to Congress. So that was like a lovely little PhD for 3 years in how programs have difficulty over time. So that was a wonderful opportunity. I ended up doing the Warfighter Information Network Tactical Nunn-McCurdy, working a lot across the building with everyone, keep at the time PA&E, Program Analysis and Evaluation. Currently, the cost assessment and program evaluation team found me, said, come work for us. I said, everyone who works for you has a PhD or is a rocket scientist. And they said, come work for us. You know how the building works and how to get things done, and we'll teach you the analysis. So I went there, and they actually ended up sending me to War College, which was amazing. And I went to ICAF, which is now Eisenhower. So that was amazing and wonderful. I started there the cost assessment data enterprise because I was very frustrated with all of these brilliant analysts kind of hand typing in information that they had to hand collect from people's hard drives, et cetera, and like from industry constantly to do these big reviews, and that we could shorten that time frame and do really good analysis, but use that time for analysis as opposed to collecting data. So we started the cost assessment data enterprise, which really kind of brought all of this data into all these major weapon systems into a system and was able to use it quickly. From there, I actually went off and had a baby and then came back and ran the Defense Innovation Board Software Acquisition and Practices Study, which was a wonderful opportunity with Eric Schmidt and Marlon Ledeen and many other wonderful people like Michael McQuaid and others who ran this, and we ran this beautiful, awesome kind of outsiders but insiders experience inside of the building to do this big study where we brought in all of these very cool people from Silicon Valley and outside that said, why is the Pentagon doing everything slowly, and actually like got them deep into the programs of issues and teed up, for them, like not all of this is actually that easy. It's actually very difficult. And there was a lot of wonderful recommendations that came over. Then went over to the House Armed Services Committee and was the science and technology professional staff member for the majority, in which I got to work with Arun and Andy often. And then came into the building with Undersecretary Shyu, as you mentioned, as our senior advisor, and got to run all of these very cool things like standing up the AppFit world, accelerating the procurement and fielding of innovative technologies. And we got to work on Radar, the Rapid Defense Experimentation Reserve, and really kind of getting into this, what is now looking like MIA, which is Mission Engineering Integration an assessment, but it's not actually what it means, agency or something like that. But, actually kind of doing iterative DevSecOps of actual weapons in the field with the warfighter, seeing how things go and moving things quickly out there to them. And also got to stand up off Strategic Capital with Jason Rothschild and others. So that was a great time. And now you're post-government? Post-government.
Taking all of that experience and helping out clients.
Yes, I am.
Navigating all of that.
Navigating the building and trying to figure out how to think through next steps of, where we want to be, who we want to work with, how we get there. And a lot of that is about kind of iterating and doing things along the way.
All right, top that.
Wow. I don't have that much to say. I came to Washington, D.C., working in a mailroom for a personal office and negotiated my way up to being the military legislative assistant for a senator on armed services. That's when I first encountered Arun. He was always trying to teach me how to request R&D funding better. So I took a lot away from that. After a couple years on the Hill, I was in the private sector, spent some time as a lobbyist for the National Guard Association, then went to the Department of Defense as a contractor, helping the acquisition community in their how they engaged with Congress. Went back to the Hill for another personal office where I then got an opportunity to work on the Milcon subcommittee for appropriations. Got to see and do a lot of travel, working on military construction projects across the globe. An opportunity came available to move to the defense subcommittee, and that's where I ended my career. But while there, I interacted with Arun at the time and Bess a little bit. I had a broad portfolio throughout my career. I was on the majority side several times, minority side several times, usually in the R&D space, covering anything from BA1 all through rapid prototyping and beyond, and then did acquisition programs in the procurement accounts. So I left the Hill after retiring and now work for Draper Labs as their strategic outreach.
And Draper is a NDI member, for those not familiar, not-for-profit research organization. Working on, traditionally we always think of them as positioning, navigating, timing, threat, GPS, nuclear missiles.
Microelectronics.
And microelectronics, things like that. Right. Great up in mostly Cambridge, Massachusetts. Right. All right. So fantastic backgrounds, perfect for this conversation. So what I really want to talk to you guys about is how to track funding. So if you're a person on the outside, you hear about these things about budget requests, big announcements, things show up on websites. You hear about an appropriations process, more things show up on websites. But really what matters to you is, how do I compete for contracts? So let's start out with the assumption that all of that is very difficult for the average human to do, even the average defense contractor or wannabe defense contractor do. So challenge my assumption. Do you agree, disagree? That's tracking and understanding where that money's coming from, where it's going to. Is it a challenge?
I would say yes. A lot of the information that the department provides is public and it's posted on the comptroller website, and you can find it, but you have to know where to find it and what to look for. But just walking off the street or having a political science degree and having an interest, you may not come across it and know where to look. And it's surprising to me, having been in industry a little while, that so many people don't understand the intricacies, and that's some of the expertise I try to provide to my company and other companies when we talk to about what the budget process is like from a congressional side of the house.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is very difficult. And it's funny, having been in the department for 20 years, you're always like, what's so hard about knowing where I sit and who to talk to? And it's like almost impossible from the outside, right? People's phone numbers aren't usually online, contact information, all of that thing. But then additionally, for the money specifically, right? You can go into the comptroller website, you can pull down the 800 different RDocs, all of that is public information, but it's very high level information. And I might note, as 3 former professional staff members, we used to get way more information later on. And we would be very upset if we only had president's budget requests to do decision making. Right. And so, everybody inside the building and on the Hill understands actually how difficult it is to actually track the money. There's a lot of work that goes into the staffer day briefings. It's a lot of work that goes into the public documents that are hanging on the website. But how much money is where, and who's responsible for it, and what it's going to, and which contracts they're actually going to, is actually something that's managed out of spreadsheets to this very day, right? And so there's no actual way to see into that unless you're sitting in the office with the person that owns the spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. Even the leaders of the offices will have to bring those people in and say, tell me where the money is, what's going on, and what we're spending the money on.
I love the irony of the projects that are funding next generation artificial intelligence or quantum computing. The actual money is being tracked on Excel spreadsheet, right? Or paper.
Yep.
Correct. Or PDFs that you can only print.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And actually, the way money transfers in the department is not, I don't get to log into my bank account and check my checking account and see that I have $10 in here, and then I'm able to decide where those $10 go. I actually get a PDF sent to me with the amount of money that I have with some information on it. I cut a check to someone else. We send another PDF via email to someone else.
And that's office to office.
That's office to office, especially if I have money that another contracting officer in another office is going to spend. I send them a MIPR. So you send them literally a sheet of paper that has the information on it. I send it to you, and now you have the money, and you can write a contract with that sheet of paper that was emailed to you.
Complex, simultaneously public, at least in some sense, because, let's just set the ground rules here, it is taxpayer money, and therefore both the executive branch and the Congress have to show the public, in some sense, what the money is being used for. And that's why you can go to this Pentagon comptroller website and see what they're asking for and what we call the president's budget request. You can go to the congressional websites of the various committees, the appropriations committees, and see what they've done in their various bills as they fight their way through these stages. And I'm asserting that it's hard, and you've agreed with that. Now I'm asserting that it matters, that it's important to track these things. Why generally, we'll dive in a little bit from your previous roles, but in general, is it important to be transparent, trackable at the high level?
Having worked for Congress, I believe so. This taxpayers' money. You want to be a good steward of that money and make sure you're fiscally responsible and show and to understand where those tax dollars are going and how they're being executed, and doing it successfully or unsuccessfully in the other case. So it's incumbent, I think, in a democracy to show where taxpayers are getting the value for the dollars that they're putting in. And having worked on defense programs, we did the best we could at showing that level of transparency, providing that insight. We, similar to the House, on the Senate side, we would issue a report every year that went along with our bill and kind of explain some of the actions we took towards specific programs.
And this is all part of democracy.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So Bess, you spent a lot of time on the Pentagon side. Why is it that you, working those jobs in cost analysis or in research and engineering, would care so much about being able to track funding? Because you weren't working on the industry side, you weren't competing for contracts. What would you have lost on the executive branch side if you lost track of the money? Let me start you on one. I worked for David Norquist. The audit, for example, probably pretty important if the Pentagon is ever going to achieve the goal of passing the financial audit to really be able to track all the dollars. So I'll give you that one. What other reasons did it matter in your old life in the Pentagon?
Yeah, I mean, so I was always in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. The Office of the Secretary of Defense is supposed to know what is going on and being able to make major decisions and trade-offs, working with the Joint Staff and other folks like that. You want to be able to make sure that people are, the same things that the appropriators want to make sure, and the same thing Congress on the Hill want to make sure is like, all right, we've given this money. Is this program doing well? How far along is it? Is it actually developing something? Is it actually meeting the benchmarks that it needs to meet? Sometimes when you have like 20-year programs, you want to make sure that like all those little kind of milestones are being met so that you know that you're going to get something in 20 years. A lot of what's going on right now in the building is like switching from those kind of 20-year programs down to what if we build a little, field a little, test a little, iterate, right? Get things to the field, play with it, see if that helps a little bit, closing the joint warfighting capability gaps, and like getting the warfighter more and more what it needs as quickly as possible. Those types of like more bite-sized amounts will make it easier to make sure that programs are actually delivering capability, right? Because you can see it, you can hear it from the warfighters. You are actually able to see kind of your capability gaps shrinking. But you need to make sure that the money is going to the right places, make sure that it's actually happening that way. Now, that said, inside the building, right, like when I'm given this out of money to do my own thing, I kind of want to like cap it there, right? I want to be able to make those decisions inside. So I have this spreadsheet that I am in control of, and no one else is going to take my money if like I'm a little bit late executing something. I have a good plan on what I'm going to do. I don't want anyone to take my money before then. So maybe just like making sure that's in my spreadsheet and not being reported up as not being spent is a useful thing to me as someone in that, like, further down in a program office trying to get their stuff executed, because knowing all the things that I need to do. But there's like kind of like a disincentive almost to share with anyone above. We used to say things like the PMs don't want to share with other PMs, the PMs don't want to share with the PEOs don't want to share with the SAEs, the service acquisition executives, the service acquisition executives don't want to share with OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense, OSD doesn't want to share with GAO, GAO doesn't want to share with Congress, right? Like everybody has their like level of, being able to kind of have that responsibility. Obviously, the whole department works better, faster, more efficiently if everyone can see the data and you bring the best analysis and use to that at the same time, obviously. I think we're all on that page, but there is that kind of disincentive as someone who needs to get something done and knows that I haven't gotten to spend all that money, but I know where I need to. I don't want it to be taken away from me.
So I know the kinds of documents that the public can see. They're things called justification books, justification materials. I know there's speeches you can see. There's giant budget reports produced by both the Pentagon and Office of Management and Budget. When you were working in the Pentagon, either on the analysis side, advising the secretary on how programs were doing, or on the coordination and direction side over in the research and engineering office, working for the undersecretary, was that all you had, or did you have a whole lot of other information?
That is a wonderful conversation, right? And so a lot of that stuff is that even people like the, high levels inside of the Office of Secretary of Defense they can see what their money is that they control, but they can't as well see as everything else. So, right? Like,
because in some sense,
yeah,
there's a thing called the Fourth Estate, the Office of the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
And they control a little money.
Yeah.
But to the world, they're also in charge of the Pentagon.
That's right.
So therefore, they're in charge of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, Marine Corps, DARPA, everyone.
100%.
So I'm going to hope there's someone called the Secretary of Defense. They must know what's going on.
That's right.
Is that just a hope?
So, these are conversations that I had with the appropriators all the time, right? Like OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense, you are in charge of policy and oversight. You don't control any of the money. One of the things that happens when you don't control any of the money and you're just doing policy and oversight of money is that you don't actually control it, and you're not able to actually direct where it goes, and you're not able to actually catch the things that fall in between the cracks. So for things like joint efforts, right? Joint efforts don't necessarily fit into my Air Force requirements, and they don't necessarily fit into your Army requirements. They don't necessarily fit into your Navy requirements. They kind of fall on the floor somewhere in between. So who is responsible for making sure that that type of thing happens? JADC2 was an excellent conversation, right?
So there are cases where you felt like, okay, we got to step in. That wasn't my question.
Right. Your question is, can I see everything and make sure that everything is happening?
Simultaneously doing the things that interest you.
And I have to tell you, something that is frustrating about being in the building and not being able to see exactly all of the information that's happening in different, all the information about all the efforts that are happening in Army, Navy, Air Force, et cetera. You have to kind of do data polls at this point. So a lot of the stuff that we were actually working on, and Cyrus Jabari and others were doing the chief data officer of R&E for a while, was really working with the services to figure out like, hey, what are you spending on quantum and like the critical technology areas? What are you spending on it, right? Like where are we spending like across so we can actually answer the question? I mean, there's a question that always comes up when you're working with comptroller in the announcement for the budget, which is like, how much of this is AI? And we need to come up with an AI number, which is very high fidelity, I promise you, except for the fact that what does that even mean, right? It's like asking how much of this budget is software, right? There's software everywhere. There's a lot of people working on AI in different places, and some things are called AI, but not really. But you know what I mean? Like it's very hard to dive deep into those budget books or anything else. I mean, really, it becomes like the program manager has to tell you, 20% of my,
because like you said earlier, there is no system.
There is no system.
There's lots of individual systems.
Yes, and we are still to this day doing data calls.
The clever people at OSD, who even above them have another set of people watching over them, who they also don't want to share with at the White House, the Office of Management Budget, who's got to deal with the Pentagon, and Health and Human Services, and NASA, and everyone running their own internal exercises like this. They present something over to the Hill, and now folks on your old committee, the Appropriations Committee, and your subcommittee was the defense part of that, has to absorb that information. And so beyond the public stuff that we just talked about, what other documents and other kinds of information were you using to track?
So we had a lot of inputs. I would say that we are, as a congressional staffer, you're on a committee, you're flooded with information. You get information from the services, industry, and even member offices about individual programs. So you're getting a large volume, and it's you have to learn how to run through that quickly and make quick decisions on what is really, really important to understanding a program versus what can wait at another time. As the budget comes over, one of the processes is you review just the justification books that each of the services put together by account, and it's line for line, and it gives you the total account responsibility of what's going to be happening with that dollar. And so we would look at that first, and then we would also engage with the department and the services and have what they called staffer days. Let's say if it were the Air Force would spend a day, and prior to that, build slide decks that showed how the F-15 or the C-130 program was going to execute the dollars requested in that fiscal year. So we had staffer day briefings that provided unit cost data, schedules, and obligations and expenditures for that funding, because DoD and we used metrics on how much money was being spent per fiscal year in the time of the fiscal year, depending on the life of the money. So we would have staffer day briefs. We would ask questions. We'd have follow-up engagements, follow-up meetings. So it's a very dynamic give and take process.
Access to the classified information.
All of that.
All of that information in the classified world.
It's a very manual process, very old school process, where it's relationships, meetings, and sharing data through spreadsheets.
And PDFs.
So now that's you trying to read a set of information produced by the executive branch, pretending that you're the executive branch. And there's, I suppose, a level of frustration in how much information you get. It's never precisely what you want, and then that results in these meetings or public hearings and things like that. And you then, wearing your old Pentagon hat, are on the receiving end of these questions, which, like you said before, just another person asking you for a data call.
Correct. But also the amount of energy that goes into putting together those staffer day briefings is so much, right? Like we used to run through them constantly, right? Like, we would have the teams put them together on exactly what their schedules were, making sure that they met everything that we had expected out of them, make sure that they're on time and doing all the things. But like we would constantly go back and forth to make sure that all of that information was as good as possible. But again, it's all hand-jammed information into PowerPoint presentations, showing schedules that are all drawn by people inside of Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, right?
Because the machine that produced the budget request was still not producing it in a way that was useful for the people who actually turned that budget request into actual money through the appropriations.
Yes, 100%.
So at the end of your process, your old process, the congressional process that we all played in some role, you're also producing a set of budget information. So how does then Congress try to make that information more transparent to its constituents? Like, what's the process they use to then show how this money is going to...
So you touched on one of them. We have each of the committees conducts oversight hearings. We conducted oversight hearings with each of the services, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense, and then as needed for other hot topical issues. So we would have engagements with the members. Staff would put specific questions together for the members to ask so that they could get the information that they need in a public forum. That is sometimes very easy, sometimes very difficult, depending on the issue, depending how contentious a discussion is.
And I, as a citizen, can hear that.
Yeah, you can see
They're
it.
asking questions about how much is spent on AI. They're yelling that there's not enough spent on AI.
So the committee would broadcast each of their hearings on their website. Sometimes C-SPAN would pick those up at different times. So those are considered public. And if you're in Washington and you happen to be on the Hill that day, you could walk in and see those hearings as they take place. So again, it's to increase the transparency and to let the taxpayer know that that there is oversight to how their public dollars are being spent.
In the end, then, product is...
So at the end, we have a subcommittee markup where we've taken the president's budget, make our recommendations to either maybe add money to a program, reduce money to a program, or add directive language telling the program, hey, we need you to go do this because we're not satisfied with the level of information we're getting, or we're concerned about how the program is functioning. So at subcommittee level, the members of that subcommittee pass it. They can add amendments if they want to, but they discuss it, and then they send it to the full committee, where then you've got the broader membership of the committee, not just the defense subcommittee, but the broader full committee.
Many of these things are public.
These are public, yep. So we would have markups in public, in a public space. You could come and just watch it. Congressional offices would send their staff to go watch it. Industry would send their representatives, and even the services would send their representatives, and allow you to watch the public law making process. And that's where members could offer amendments. They didn't feel like there was enough money for an issue that was important to them, so they would offer an amendment. We would either try to work with them to accept it, or we would have to vote on it. Once that package was done, we referred it to the full Senate, and then it was up to the leadership on the Republican and Democratic side to decide when that piece of legislation is going to come to the floor. And then the next step would be go to the floor, take amendments from 100 senators, and debate the legislation. Once it gets off the floor, then at some point you go marry that bill up with your counterpart on the House, and then you try to resolve.
The final. And now we're recording on a day where the appropriations process kind of broke down. The government, as a result, is shut down. We're actually in this hopeful moment that an appropriations of a form will pass somehow, and people get back to work, and the government will start working again. At the end of this, pretend we're in a normal year. At the end of this appropriations process, now think of me as a citizen or as a company. What does the Congress produce to then show me where is the money going to be spent?
We produce a final bill. That's the text language of the legislation, but we also do a combined report, or depending on it shows the account totals, increases, decreases, any changes to the president's budget. And oftentimes there's legislative language explaining why there was a change or asking for additional information or providing more information.
So if I'm a company that does this kind of machining or is interested in this kind of navigation systems, and I know I work on that, it's up to me then to look at these documents, which we've made jokes about. The Congress doesn't produce spreadsheets or databases that are searchable. It produces scanned PDFs and on websites. And then I have to do the translation of these account numbers back to what the executive branch had produced and their account numbers and their information, and try to then translate that into, okay, I can kind of see how much money they're going to spend in these areas. Bess was sort of lamenting the information sharing within the Pentagon. And then we've all been lamenting the sharing between Congress and the Pentagon. And I guess I'm going to lament Congress isn't really sharing information that well with the rest of the world either, right? I mean, it's fair to say.
Transparent to a point. Right.
Scan PDFs, it's not 1988 anymore, right?
Right.
Ironically, Congress is funding the same AI project and is choosing not to use any of this technology. Mm-hmm. Is that intentional, you think, or is that just traditional?
I think a lot of it is traditional, and it's just the way we've always done things. So I don't think that's by design to obfuscate information. I do think it would take some sort of investment in software that may or may not exist to provide that level of information.
Yes, I'm going to assert year 2025, that software has existed for
probably
30 years.
Probably.
So
probably.
It's not a technical issue. Yeah, it's curious.
So here's what I would say. Right now, the services all produce so before it even gets to Congress, right? Services produce their budgets for 27 currently, right? They're working on it. I believe actually, and this is where I'm dated a little bit, but I believe they're actually going into like the full comptroller system to upload that. So comptroller has this website, but it goes then it's submitted into another organization, CAPE's website, right? Like CAPE's World. They have that they manage for the Deputy Secretary of War, what the next 5 years looks like. They do the trade-offs with everybody, the joint staff, all the co-coms, everybody works through with these major deputy meetings and the big deputy review that's going on. And then they work through what 27 is going to look like. All of these databases don't actually feed into them. They all get reloaded with information. When there's like an actual, set of information that comes, it doesn't go to the White House with the database where they just like log in and they say, okay, I don't love this, this, and this. I would make these tweaks. They actually like send them paper and then they send back paper or like commentary and changes, which is then uploaded into the system by the analysts. You know what I mean? And then when it's time to actually build the budget, comptroller actually loads up all of these beautiful PDFs that are again, separately just edited to make sure that it matches what the other thing is and nothing actually talks to each other or pulls from each other. And then we send it over to Congress and we're like, Congress, good luck. Read the things on all of the different spreadsheets that we have and the top level numbers of everything and hope you can find all of the information. We'll give you a couple extra briefings. Tell us if you have any questions. But then they have to go in and re-enter all of the data into their spreadsheet so that their people and their budget directors and everyone can figure out where all the money is. And when they make a change, they have to put it into their thing that prints it all out and then they scan it in and then we get it back. We being the executive branch, when it takes 20 years and now it takes a long time for me to stop saying we, my apologies. The executive branch gets it back and they hand type in all the other things. Now, in the 15 years that I have been trying to get work on data sharing and backbones inside of the department with many other amazing champions that have been working it throughout the department, there is absolutely technology out there now that grabs everything that we do publicly, grabs everything that Congress does publicly, and puts it all together as best as they possibly can. And your client, your folks here and your members and NDIA, I'm sure all have budget tracking software that everybody on the outside is using, but the department has never wanted to use it themselves. Every big company is doing that. But there are very cool companies out there that right now that are trying to show that they can track where this money is. Now, the things that they can't track, because it's all kept in spreadsheets inside. And so you can only do it when press releases happen, when companies get awards and stuff like that, is where the money is going after that, once it comes in.
So let's get to this. So there's this, general event that there's information, it's widely distributed. People who know get to do their jobs, which is very good. Not everyone has their highest priority to be transparent or public or sharing, whether you're sitting in the executive branch or sitting on the congressional side. Got it. Arguably, the people that matter most are the people actually going to do the work, right? Whether it's in industry or universities or government labs, or you're talking about, the people actually doing the work at manufacturing or developing emerging technologies, right? So give us some hope, right? Give us some hope that there are tools or there is some way for them to be able to track what they need to do. Or if not, sort of give us your wish list. Like, how do I make this better for the people trying to work with the Defense Department, to the Pentagon, to develop and deploy emerging technology?
I have no hope right now. Right now, it's unfortunately word of mouth of where things go, and doing your best to track back to the the R&D documents and the J books, and trying to read which offices have which thing, and hope that you know someone in one of those offices that you can reach out to. My hope would be at some point that there becomes a public website that comptroller probably owns, or someone else, that actually shows these are the types of things that are happening. This is what money that actually has been received that's on these types of the work, like current year, not for next year. And these are the offices that are responsible for it.
So I, as a company, work with that office in the Army. Is it right now, am I able to identify by the accounts that the executive branch produces or the Congress list, do I know what offices this money is going to in a public document yet?
So two things to that, sorry, and then I'll refer to you. Right now, inside of a normal project, at least for RDT&E, and I don't speak as much for O&M and procurement and other things like that, but usually for procurement. But like you will have an office responsible for this line, usually.
Who knows?
Or at least a PEO. That's right. And that's not necessarily anywhere, except if you read carefully inside of the documents posted on the website, it might say which office owns it, because they say in our office, this office, right? And you can grab that from there. So that's how you end up knowing, right? But even inside, right? There's some ways of knowing inside of the RDoc, like the RDT&E, the end of the program element number has a DZ. The DZ means OSD. It has an E. The E means DARPA for some reason, right? It has an A, right? But at least it gets you to the Air Force. It gets you to the DARPA. It gets you to a kind of high level thing, but it doesn't get you to.
But you gotta have a lot of knowledge to get it.
You have to have so much knowledge.
Yeah, it's not going to be obvious what program office is necessarily going to own that money and where that program office is sitting.
And even worse, right now, inside of reconciliation, I'm not even sure the department understood inside of reconciliation for the $150 billion.
An extra amount of money.
Which offices were supposed to get it. I don't know that there was a ton of conversation back and forth about it. And so there was a lot of assumptions made in the president's budget and which lines that money was expected to go to. The president's budget went over. And then also recently we had...
Gotcha. But that's a level of complication.
It's even more.
Okay. Now explain to me how I as a company should understand. Okay. I understand requests for proposals, and I understand broad agency announcements if I'm more of a university. Is there a way for me to connect those things that I see from the Army Research Office or DARPA or NAVC back to all these budget documents you're talking about? Or should I even try?
Some of the budget documents tell you when the anticipated award is and the contract level. So if you read the documents correctly, and usually on the procurement, they do offer that information, they even show the contractor who's intended to get the money in past years. Now they can't necessarily they can't tell you exactly for the presumed, but in the past they can show you how much they allocated, the dates for the period of performance of the contract, and how much, and what type of contract vehicle they used. So you can somewhat know, but usually the contract office is not usually listed. That's more, you have to understand internal dynamics of the services. So who owns missile programs, who owns ship programs, So that level of knowledge is probably going to be missing from the public documentation.
And when you see an RFP that comes out, request for proposal that comes out, or a BAA,
Broad agency announcement.
yes, thank you, you might not know which line of the budget it comes from, but it's funding that office that's giving out the money.
And I guess I think I'm asserting this matters. Why? Because I kind of want to know the market I'm competing,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, as a company, you want to know where you place your own investments, where the government is going on a certain project. And if your project aligns, are the resources being programmed as you plan, or is the department making a change? Are they no longer investing in program X or program Y? And that is going to change a company's projection of where they are going to put their resources and change some of their business decisions. So,
And because they don't see it, they aren't able to change what type of
And so
agile
they
way.
are not as responsive to their customer, the Pentagon, and its future needs.
That's right.
As they possibly.
I would say that the larger companies have the resources and the personnel to do that. Smaller companies, medium-sized companies may not.
Okay, so would you guys say, I think the answer is going to be yes. In an era where we're trying to expand the defense industrial base, right? Bring more companies in, bring more commercial companies in. Secretary Hegseth last week just announced another set of great ideas on acquisition reform and speed and expanding commercial use of commercial technologies. Are all of these kinds of things we've been talking about, budget transparencies, they're getting away with all of that. Fair? They kind of stop you from doing all that expansion.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I would think, if the department wants to move quickly, the department wants to engage with lots of non-traditionals and small, cool, innovative companies around the country, they should be very upfront about, here's how much money we have and these types of things for these types of
So
I'm arguing that it shouldn't preclude that. I think it's a reason for the department to actually invest on actually sharing that information.
more transparent.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that, like, here's the things that we're doing. These are the teams that are working these things. If you're interested in those, this isn't where you go, right? Like, that should absolutely be a
So the small
priority for
company
the
that has a good idea working out of a small facility or their garage, they may not be tracking it, but the more transparency, they may be aware of it, and it gives them an opportunity. Oh, I may have a solution. I may be able to bring it to the services or the department for their needs.
Making it easier for them to potentially enter. the
Yes.
defense
Right.
market.
I think that's very aligned
Right.
to the secretary's current vision right now.
So, for example, down in the tactical weeds, what piece of information do you think would be useful for the companies you guys are interacting with now that you're on the outside? What types of information would you wish you could see in these budget documents or these appropriations documents?
It's a little bit different for me because I know how to read those documents. So I have a little bit of information or a way to interpret the information that maybe not everybody does. So I feel, I feel like the level of information is there. You kind of need the expertise to read it, and that's not always affordable to everybody. So I don't know that I can give an honest answer, but there are probably other ways that they can provide the transparency.
So in these major weapon systems today, there's a lot of things that go into major weapon systems. They want to do commercial first. There's a lot of cool companies out there that are doing things that they've gotten other outside private capital investing in them so that they are really moving forward. They've got great engineers. They've got great user interface folks. They're able to produce something quickly and hand it over. But the justification documents aren't going to go into a massive defense acquisition program at a deep level and say, here are all the things we're working on right now. So that company is not going to know where they can inject and what they can offer that can get sunset from the other. That trade-off information is not there. That's only on often in the program manager's head or anything like that. But those companies know that it would fit under this umbrella, but they don't know what they would be sunsetting or they would be competing with, and they don't know how to bring it to the program manager, right? So how do we get a little bit more all these big programs? If you can bring us stuff that will move us forward quicker on the following areas, we are interested in that, right? And so oftentimes there will be like an organization, like a big PEO will have like a front door, but it's like an email that goes nowhere, right? And so you actually need a team of people staffing that, thinking through, that are knowledgeable enough to say, oh, you should be going to talk to this person because this person can explain it. Best case scenario is that then becomes something that is public to everybody.
And somehow connected to the actual budget.
Well, totally connected, because those people are receiving money specifically, right, from those things. And so it should be public who's receiving what money and who's in charge and what they're working on.
Okay, but let me push back on those very, we'll call them sweet notions. Isn't that providing a lot of information to people who we don't want to have all that?
That is the argument. The argument is always, why do we post our major defense acquisition programs online? Why do we post our budget and like all these documents that tell you what we're working on online? Like all of that is being like, scanned and pulled into information for our adversaries. 100%. So we have two options in the world. We lock everything down, or we become a little bit more agile and open on the way to do it. And if we believe that our strength is our industry and our innovation and our amazing companies, we should be a little bit more open to allow them to compete in, so that we can actually harness the great American traits that we have and use those for our national security faster, quicker, all the things that the Secretary was talking about on Friday.
Is it also difficult for the government as a customer dealing with its potential vendors on the industry side to be forced to reveal a lot about its budget? So, I'm buying a car and don't want the car salesman to know how much I'm willing to spend. It puts me at a disadvantage when I have, pasted on my forehead, I'm willing to spend $20,000 on this car. Does it put the customer who's trying to work in the best interest of the taxpayer in disadvantage to be too transparent to the industry?
Well, I would say that was a good argument when we had major defense acquisition programs with one prime and that's it, right? And so then you can say, like, inside the procurement documents, I'm going to tell you what my budget is for the future, and they're going to be pretty sure that they know what they're going to get paid for because it's a 20-year program. I think it's a different situation if you have teams of people that are working on things in offices, right? Like that are doing iterative, quick things and making sure that they, kind of roll things through and then have a program of record. But the program of record isn't guaranteed to one company or not. It's guaranteed to the company that really brings the best technology as you go through. Now you don't know how much of that is going to any sort of company. It's just how much they have to play with. But if I'm in the program office and I can have 3 different companies come in or 4 different companies come in and show me different things that will advance the capability of the department to closing those joint warfare capability gaps, that's worth it to me. And I don't know that knowing exactly how much I'm really, I have is necessarily tied to how much you're going to negotiate for, because you still want to play and be able to do this, right?
Is this ever a thing you thought about on the appropriations side? We're giving too much either to threats or to even the vendor.
I think it's got to be a balance, right? You're right. We put a lot of material out in the public sphere. Has that been a problematic? I'm sure it has. But at the same time, it's part of the transparency of having a democracy. The super exquisite, really top secret things that you want to protect, we protect. And you have to have clearances to see those. And I think those are relatively protected. But I think that's just kind of the give and take you have to have.
It's the nature of democracy.
It's the nature of democracy, right. And it's one of our specialties. If we believe that our small, non-traditional, awesome, innovative businesses are really out there bringing, sharpening the military's edge, then we want to actually be able to use them. And if they don't know where to go, we won't be able to use them.
Right. So you guys are working on something with us at ETI now, which is looking at all of the recent efforts in the last 5, maybe decade or so, to be more flexible and faster with all this money spending we've been talking about. Creating things like, funds where you can do rapid investments and rapid prototyping, right? Doing things like reducing the number of accounts to give a little more flexibility to people to deal with emerging threats and emerging technologies. Flexibility is a big part of what the Secretary's announcing in terms of how he's going to make acquisition reform let the department move faster, right? So this money flexibility make some sense when we're thinking about we're in a competition with China. We have to keep up with the private sector. We have to keep up with the changing nature of technology. This conversation we've been talking about, but wow, there's this underside. Transparency is important as well, right? What's interesting to me is what you guys are trying to think about is how you balance the two of them. Have appropriate flexibility and speed, but have appropriate transparency. So I know you're early into it still, but what are some of the early thoughts that you guys have had as you've been turning this problem over in your heads?
Well, a lot of it too depends on the lens that you're using. If you're from the Department of Defense, you're going to look at what's fast for you and what's worked in the past. And so one of the things we want to try to do is highlight opportunities that they may have that a program manager may not be aware of or may have missed because they're just not exposed to it.
They're allowed to do these things. It would make their lives easier, give them flexibility. They just don't even know they're allowed to do it.
Correct. So highlight my goal is to highlight authorities and existing abilities that they already have. Flexibility is great. But as you say, you have to have from a congressional side, you want to have a little bit of understanding of how the taxpayers' dollars are going to be spent. And so that requires some level of control and guardrails. And so what we're trying to do is highlight those opportunities that people can use to show that go out, try this, what works, what hasn't worked, before you start asking for just an unlimited amount of money and unlimited guardrails.
Coming from an office that used to have lots of animated discussions with Andy's old office and on Senate Appropriations, I think, absolutely, I 100% agree and inherently that more information and visibility and transparency is absolutely the way to do this. I think that you also need to give the ability to the people, just like the secretary said on Friday, and in his new portfolio acquisition executives, thank you, his PAEs, they should be able to make those decisions on trade-offs within their portfolio. So if we were to take a bunch of programs and put them underneath it, as opposed to having what we've historically had, which is each program has its own dollar amount, right? Now that portfolio acquisition executive needs to make smart trades between its programs, right? And working across. Now, I don't want everything to become a zero-sum game under, one thing, but you have to be able to kind of move things from one thing to the other. Something slows down, the other thing can accelerate over here, right? They should be able to make those decisions. I think the way to do that, right? And if the appropriators are going to be okay with that, is give them those higher level line numbers or whatever it is in the budget, right? Program elements underneath their portfolio that they can then not just say it's for this helicopter, but it's for helicopters of some sort or robotics of some sort or automated whatever, and then be able to make those trades within and then be able to report back to Congress on what it is spending. Right. But you have to get to that reporting back. So all of it goes back to software and data as a backbone. If you actually had it and were able to give them updates on what you were actually doing, that's amazing. There's a lot of things in the Secretary's acquisition memo that, say it wants stoplight charts pretty much, right? On how these programs are doing. We're going back to 20 years ago when I ran the DAYS process, right? Where we would send up red, yellow, green charts on how these programs are doing. That took a month, every month, of everybody hand reviewing everything and hand typing things there and hand choosing colors, right? We got to get it from program management software, from requirements management software, from live traceability software. These things exist. It's what commercial world is using in their software. We need to be able to pull that information and be able to make sure we understand what those metrics are that we want to be looking at, and so that the department can see how things are going quickly. Easily and share that information.
And arguably that helps then Congress with its oversight.
Absolutely, because now Congress knows how things are going along the way.
And does it arguably then also help industry with its planning as well?
I would think so.
I would think so, especially if we made this a little bit more public. Now, I don't know how our current programs are doing at the moment is going to be, but I do think that kind of high level, what we're working on, what's been successful, what's not, and kind of vision about what we want to get to should be shared with the industry.
And I want to say I had a chance to work on PPBE, Planning, Programming, Budgeting, Execution Commission. We had a set of ideas we put out, which are starting to find their way into legislation and Pentagon activities on things like this, balancing speed, balancing flexibility, balancing transparency. We're at a moment where everyone seems to agree we need to do things differently. It's really fun to watch the two of you think about these things because your perspectives are slightly different. So for NDIA members who want to give you ideas, I'll just say you're working with one of our associate researchers, Wilson Miles. Reach out to us, eti@ndia.org. You guys are open to hearing ideas, concerns from the industry side as well.
Oh, please.
As to what the needs are.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys helping with that.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
And really appreciate you guys joining this conversation. Thanks for being the guests.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. It was great.
This was fun.
Thanks to Bess and Andy for joining us today. Thanks to everyone for watching another episode of Emerging Tech Horizons. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our latest content. We're available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. We also want to thank our sponsor, Booz Allen Hamilton, for sponsoring today's episode. We encourage you to please visit ETI's website to sign up for our mailing list and register for our various webinars, events, and educational offerings, including our Tech 101 series. A special thank you to Melanie Yu, Daniel Park, Wilson Miles, and two interns, Elijah the intern and Whitty the intern, for producing this episode. Thanks again for joining us on Emerging Tech Horizons.